Hey everyone, Saul Marquez here. I'm so excited to talk to you about an amazing platform that's changing the game in launching new drugs to the market. Launching a pharmaceutical brand is intense, it's complex, the stakes are super high, and it's critical to consider how to launch smarter and faster, how to get the right trajectory, and how to have all the right checks and balances in place to support timely decision making. Today, we look at the place of tech for our answers. It's an enabler that we all have to consider to reach our goals in pharma launch. And what we're going to cover is a platform called Ignite. It's an intuitive, agile, and collaborative launch readiness tool built specifically for pharma by previous pharma leaders and experts in the space. And they're driving effective and collaborative launch readiness, planning, tracking, all the above. So we've got this two-part series that really digs into an amazing framework. The privilege of chatting with Keitel Suri, VP at Lumanity, is just an incredible opportunity to learn more about how you can launch pharma drugs faster and with more confidence. Hope you enjoyed part one of this series. Here we go. Kai, welcome.
Thank you very much, Saul. That was a mouthful of an introduction, but delighted to be here.
I love it. Well, no, it's so great to have you on, Kai. You've done a lot, and we're definitely excited to learn from you. So before we get into launching medicines and everything that we're going to unpack today, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you got into healthcare.
Yeah, so I guess healthcare is in my DNA, is probably what I would say, from an early career, which was focused around pharmacy and being a hospital pharmacist. So on the actual healthcare professional side, before then moving, as you sort of eloquently outlined, into being on the pharma client side, learning how to spell marketing, do marketing, work in complex organizations and cross-functional teams, and then having the opportunity to take that experience from an affiliate level to regional level and that global to local, and bridging and spanning the gap. And then as you approach a certain age as a man, so approaching a late 40s, early 50s, decided to take another leap and to see if I could take some of my experience and learn from and help others on the strategic sort of consulting side with Lumanity. And that's really about anything and everything to focused on asset-based consultancy and a real deep dive into launch excellence recently. So it's in my blood. I love launch. Launch is complex. And there's a lot of things that you can do to make launches really successful. And a lot of that is in the preparation and readiness.
I love that. And, the thing I love about your background, Kite, is that you've been through it. You've worn that launch hat. Now you're sitting in the seat of somebody that, is guiding others through it successfully. And we know that the pharma space is huge and that launching medicines is at the heartbeat of all companies in the space. How is the landscape changing today, and what should people be thinking about?
Yeah, I think there's a yin and a yang with that, to be honest, Sal. In the last year, for example, we saw almost 70 novel molecules being approved in 2023, which is fantastic, right? And so the squeeze and the push of getting and the support for getting new launches, new molecular entities onto the market is absolutely there and set to grow at a sort of CAGR of 6 to 10%. Conversely, though, what we also know when you do a retrospective analysis is that a third of launches fail to meet street expectations after 1 year. And actually, that's what it's really all about. All that's opportunity assessment, the strategy and the execution, then ultimately about getting medicines to the right patients at the right time. That makes sense. But it's also about driving revenue. And it's really hard, 6 months, 12 months into a launch, really hard to change that trajectory if you're missing it to hit the ideal peak sales by typically year 5, year 7. So there's a lot riding on it. And you only get to do launch once. You only get a chance to do it right once. What we also see is newer, more complex molecules being brought onto the healthcare system, which is already burdened and full. And so therefore the burden of proof is also higher. And then when you look at the client side of things, we see organizations that have a real muscle memory for launch, but they're doing lots of launches. And actually they start to get spread thin from a capacity and an experience perspective to the other end of the spectrum where actually they just haven't launched in quite a while. So that muscle memory isn't there. And they want that. People are bright, but they want that reassurance and they want to get it right first time. That's one axis. The other axis, I think, is, are you focusing on as an asset lead? You know, you're driving that launch with a cross-functional team, or are you actually at a platform service level where you're focused on trying to drive rigor, improved rigor and discipline so that that launch excellence muscle goes across the organization? It's usually somewhere in that mix, but I guess my ultimate reflection is launch is complex. And whatever we can do to make launches simpler, easier, more clear and transparent has got to be a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I love how you've illustrated this sort of landscape. Either you have a very experienced team, but you're doing a lot of launches and you're just short bandwidth. You need help. Or on the other side, you haven't done many and the confidence is not there and there's a little more need for wayfinding.
That's right. And ultimately, you know, if you really cut to the chase on this, it's often just trying to have that or reduce that fear of messing up, of missing something big that's going to ultimately fundamentally affect two key dates: your target regulatory marketing authorization date, your FDA, EMEA, etc., or your first commercialization launch date, from which then all the commercializations then happen thereafter. You know, those are the two things. And what you've got to try and make sure in any launch readiness planning is you focus on the right things at the right time to make those timely decisions. And often that's about trying to see sort of the wood from the trees. And I've been there, right? I've been there where I literally launching an asset and I'm sitting there kind of going, my head is swimming. I am incredibly tired. I've got a senior leadership presentation the next day and I just am not sure what is going on. And I know those smart senior leaders are going to see straight through me. You know, that gives you the fear of God, right? And some of your listeners will be exactly in that position.
Totally.
And they, you know, and it's not for want of trying. You know, there's not a lack of effort. But if you don't have that transparency, if you don't have that visibility, and if you don't have that prioritization, you are going to feel in that quicksand, that quagmire of however hard I try, it gets worse and worse and worse. I've been there as a client doing that. I've also been there on the other side where a client has reached out and said, I need some help. I've worked with you before. Come in, help me. And actually, you then fast track 2 or 3 months. You put structure, you put rigor, you bring tech solutions, which is what we're going to talk about in a minute. And the difference in 2 or 3 months to then kind of going, thank goodness, I can see a path forward. I can see the wood for the trees. I can breathe a little bit. I've still got 1,000,000,001 things to do, but I have clarity and I know what is really important. And more importantly, or just as important, I'm able to provide that confidence to my organization because I'm able to give a clear narrative to senior leadership, as well as to typically a complex cross-functional team that's around launches. So, you know, I think I do bring some experience. Of course I do. Otherwise you wouldn't have me on here today, but it's not through want of having gone through the pain and sat there myself and gone, I know this isn't right. This has got to be easier. And I think ultimately today is about perhaps sharing that the myth that you can kind of do without tech is a myth, right? You need all the tools in your toolkit to help provide that transparency, that real time view of things. And, you know, and why wouldn't you seek the help and the support of tech, of automated technology platforms that can help do some of that work for you? Because actually what you want to focus on is what are the right decisions I need to make? And what is it telling me? And where do I need to place my effort? Right? And so I guess the good news for your listeners today is delighted to have the opportunity perhaps to share a framework, sort of 5 key areas that I've noticed in speaking with clients more latterly in my own experience are good things, a good checklist, and also where I think a launch management platform, and in this instance, I'm going to talk about Ignite, a launch management platform that our strategy consulting division of Lumanity has, that I think can help really add value to clients as they're leading launches.
Well, Kite, I think that's great. And by the way, like when you talked about that moment where you're about to present to a board, like I've been there. I know our listeners have been there. And we know that when you're in that moment, you've got to be in your A game and you've got to know what is going on and you got to be transparent to the best of your ability. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of frameworks because when you have a great framework, it's really that blueprint for success. So super excited to tackle your launch framework. Tell us all about it. Tell us what areas they are, and maybe let's just tackle them one by one.
Sure. I think there's 5 perhaps to share with you for me. When you're looking at launch readiness planning and a framework, and when you're looking at a launch management platform software, tech to help you in this instance, I think there are a couple of things. How can it help you provide that real-time relevant information? Plans get big quick. They really do. So having the finger on the pulse of that right information is really important. Solutions need to be simple to use, right? You don't need to have a PhD to be able to navigate it and to work it out, because actually that's just more admin burden. Critically, number 3, in my view, how does a solution help you do joined up coordinated planning? Because most launches anchor around 60 to 70% of revenues in market assets will anchor around somewhere between 6 to 10 countries. So as a minimum, even though you might be launching in 80, 90, 100 countries around the world, you've got to get those 6 to 10 right. And if they're not right, you need to do number 4, which is what are the risks and issues management areas that you've got to know early so you can understand, inform, pivot, provide support, particularly in those areas. And finally, the 5th one, so if you're doing all of that right, what is the ecosystem of support that you need to have wrapped around the software? Because it's not just the software. The software and the tool is designed to help you make smart decisions. But actually, as well as I do, Sal, is it easy to set up? When you forget 3 or 4 weeks down the line, how do I do that again? Is there someone that someone's there at the end of the line that can help you? Because you don't have an hour or 2 to waste to remind yourself again. And there are other resources that, depending upon your style of learning, you can kind of go to quickly. So those 5 things, I think, I would anchor around, and happy to obviously blow out each one of those in a bit more detail.
No, I love it. I love it, Kite. Kite, well, really appreciate it. As I said, huge fan of frameworks. They help us have success. Let's tackle the framework that you just shared one step at a time. Tell us about that first step, the one single source of truth.
Yeah, so I think there, and your listeners on the line, I'm sure will recognize this. Different organizations begin their commercialization for launch and gearing up launch teams and their launch readiness planning at different time windows. Some start really early, and let's say that's 4 years out from launch, anticipated first marketing authorization and first commercialization launch. Others take it down to sort of 15 months to go or 2 years to go. There's quite a lot of difference there in the window that you have to plan, to build a cross-functional team, to undertake that journey from strategic analysis and opportunity assessment to strategy development to execution, to getting the market ready, the brand ready, and the organization ready. That's what you're essentially doing for launch. So you need a single source of truth, whether it's a short window or a long window, to have that repository, to have that memory of the decisions that have been taken. Because actually, someone staying on all that journey over that window of time, if it's a 4-year one, they're not going to do that. People move. 12, 15, 18 months. It's a typical move cycle. And organizations are in constant change. So having that single source of truth that can do both things. It's like that set of glasses that you can see near or far. I need the history so I can get rapidly up to speed for new team members and I can understand, but I also need the now. Where are we? What's important? What are the interdependencies for my function? Who do I need to go and speak to? Where are we? And I think the Ignite system provides that single source of truth, recognizing the context that people and organizations can be in when you're looking at launch readiness planning. So that first one, that having that single source of truth also reflects one other thing. Plans get big quick.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Anyone says that launching is easy hasn't launched, frankly, right? And when you look at the myriad of functions that need to get involved and the myriad of strategic activities and the granular tactics, they get big quick. And you make decisions. You make a lot of decisions. What you need to do is what are the right decisions that you really need to focus in on, right? So that single source of truth, I think, is critical. That's number one on the kind of framework that I think that my experience has shown.
Yeah, and to your point, people leave, and when they do, if it's a critical role within the organization, you got to have documentation, that single source of truth to keep the project moving forward, because that commercialization success is critical. Lots of platforms are tough to use, and many would argue that they add complexity. Does Ignite add a lot of admin burden to users? Tell us about how easy or not easy it is to use.
Sure. I guess the best way I describe it in one line would be you don't need a PhD to use it. And some systems you just do. You just look at them and your heart sinks and kind of goes, oh, God. Right?
Yeah.
So here, Ignite is a system that's been built by Pharma for Pharma. It's a folder structure that allows high-level granularity or more in-depth. We would normally say sort of a maximum of 4 levels of granularity, because otherwise you really then can't see the wood for the trees. I think the other piece is that, so it's as complicated as you want it to be, right? But the actual inputting of information is really straightforward. And the fact that it's automated and the fact that you can have ease of notification so you can rapidly get to the bit that you need to do an update in the plan. That's the critical part. It's the bit that you need to do, and it's finding that information easily, efficiently, and quickly. That reduces the burden that you can sometimes see. You try and use Excel and you just can't do that. Or it's all anchored around one person. And what happens if that person leaves? Right. So you also have that transparency of users of the system being able to not only see their part, but whatever else they have permissions to sort of see. So I think that simple to use bit, filtering, getting to information easy, providing that visibility, but also making sure that you can enter, copy, upload, and scale. So that would probably be on this number 2. That would probably be my final part. If you've gone to all that effort and built all that understanding organizationally on a particular plan, why would you want to start again if you've got another launch? Surely you just want to copy, paste, and take the bits out that make most sense, right? For that asset and that organizational archetype. So again, that's all about reducing the burden, because it's often not just about one launch in an organization. Something else is coming down the line and you want that memory, or something else is launching in parallel, or lots are launching in parallel. So the efficiencies can be driven through systems that allow you to also copy, upload, and scale.
That's great, Kite. So you don't need to hire an entire engineering team. You don't need a PhD to run this thing.
Exactly.
I love it. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in, and hope you enjoyed part 1 of this series on the Ignite platform, helping pharmaceutical brands launch new drugs into the market, taking the complexity out. Join me very soon for session 2, podcast number 2 on this series, where we uncover the remaining elements of the framework. Until next time, check out the show notes for ways to get in touch and learn more, and I'll see you on episode 2.